It's the final week of college football. Doug is here. I'm here. Let's talk about it. Welcome back to the WebCast Sports, all sports, one web. It is the finals week in college football here. We previewed the game, Ohio State versus Michigan, so go check that video out. A great slate of games tomorrow in college football that really have importance. So we're going to focus in on those instead of doing our weekly picks through ESPN. So we are going to close out the season on those ESPN picks. Thank you for picking along with us as we went out through the season. We had a great fun. We had a winning record by the end of the season. We did make our picks as well, but we're not going to go through those. We need to focus, Doug, on who is going to make the championship games next weekend. We know from the SEC that LSU has booked their place. Georgia booked their place before the season even started. Let's be honest. Well, I shouldn't say that. Okay, I'm sorry, Tennessee. You had a chance. Okay, I apologize. I think even I picked Tennessee.
You did.
So I apologize.
I'll never let you live that down.
Yeah. Okay, so but anyway, Georgia versus LSU, and that one's already booked. We got Clemson, North Carolina. That one is already booked in the ACC. So let's turn our attention to let's do the Big Ten first. Let's start with the Big Ten, as it is a mess here in the Big Ten. So Big Ten West, however, a whole different story. We see two teams tied, Iowa and Purdue, atop of the conference standings. Iowa will take on Nebraska this week, a win, and they are in. Otherwise, we will have chaos ensuing. So before we get into the chaos, do you have Iowa taking care of business against Nebraska this weekend?
I do, because Nebraska is just so bad. Iowa's not fantastic by any stretch of the imagination this year, but man, is Nebraska bad.
It's been so hard to watch. You know, you look at the programs.
The Big Ten West is so hard to watch.
It's the fall from grace of some programs is hard, but you expect there to be a bottom, and you expect there to be some kind of, turnaround or something. We call it here at the WebCast the manager bounce. When you sack your coach, your manager, whatever sport you're in, your team kind of rallies together for a little bit, and maybe they did because they do have 2 wins here in conference, 3 on the season after their terrible start to the season. But really, I need more of this bounce. They're losers of 5 straight. They want this season to be over. It will be over on Saturday, as they will not be going bowling. And I agree with you. I have Iowa booking their spot. They've been there before. They want to get back to the Big Ten championship game after that thrashing that they took from Michigan last year. Move west of the Mississippi and look at the Big 12 now. So TCU with a phenomenal season, remaining undefeated. We've talked all year about how good the Big 12 was, about all the teams that, could give anyone a tough match, especially when they're at home. And the Big 12 has a bunch of them. Baylor, Oklahoma, and Baylor sitting there at 4-4 in conference is absolutely incredible. We know how good they are. They will be taking on Texas this week. Oklahoma State, Texas, Kansas State, and TCU round out the top 5. TCU booked their spot in the Big 12 championship game, so we're going to turn our focus to Kansas State, who sits there at 6-2 and takes on Kansas in their rivalry week matchup this week. A win, and they are in. A loss, and we turn our attention, the door opens for Quinn Ewers and Texas to get a win at Baylor and take that second spot. So let's start Kansas State going to bottom of the league. Kansas, even with their great start, you got Kansas State booking their spot all by themselves with a win tomorrow.
Yeah, this is going to be a good game, because you see they're down here, they're 3-5, but they're 6-5, and it's been tight games. They've had injuries. They could be 8-3 potentially with, just 2 more wins. That's a great season for Kansas. And it's just, even Iowa State, they're a tough game to play. Going to Iowa State, they're 1-7 in conference, 4-7 overall. I mean,
we know how tough it is to go there and beat Iowa State.
Yeah, this is just a tough conference. But unfortunately for Kansas, I think they lose to Kansas State in this game. And even more unfortunate for Texas, I don't think they have a chance. I think Kansas State's going to win that game.
So Kansas State locking up a spot in the Big 12 championship to really cap off a remarkable season that saw some great performances. The shutout there against Oklahoma State, the thrashing of Oklahoma. They just love beating down on the state of Oklahoma, it looks like. They will get it done, taking down Kansas this weekend. I agree with you. And we had a great matchup between TCU and Kansas State early on in the year. We're going to get that again in the Big 12 championship game next weekend. Those are our picks for the Big 12, TCU versus Kansas State. As the Big 12 follows the format of you play everyone, and then the top two teams advance and will play again in the Big 12 championship. That same structure has applied to the Pac-12, where we turn our attention to now with, another conference that we thought throughout the year just had some great talented teams. We saw what Washington did to Oregon a couple weeks ago. Michael Penix Jr. going in there and just slinging it around. Getting the win there in Eugene is really what's opened up this entire conference. We see USC sitting at 8-1. They are booked. They are ready for the Pac-12 championship game. They got a great game this weekend against Notre Dame, which could have college football overall ramifications. So I will start with that one with you. Notre Dame is secretly right outside the top 10 after every single person in the country, including Notre Dame fans, wrote off the entire season after that loss to Marshall at home, followed by a very close, questionable win against Cal at home. And, the starting quarterback got hurt. Pine comes in and really lights the team up, goes into North Carolina, gets that great win there. So they have a win over UNC, who could be the ACC champ if they take down Clemson. They do play USC now. If USC, who is already in the Pac-12, go on to win that, and Notre Dame beats USC, then Notre Dame will have a win over the Pac-12 champ. Very few teams can say that they've beaten two of the Power 5 champions. Do you think that doing something like that could play a role in the Big Ten? If Michigan beats Ohio State has that win over Notre Dame. Does that help Ohio State? If they were to lose to Michigan and Notre Dame beats USC, would you lean Ohio State to still remain in the playoff with the schedule that they've had?
It's so tough. I mean, I feel like even without Notre Dame playing that well, you still may, consider Ohio State if they were to lose. Because they're good. They're a great team. They've been ranked number 2 almost all year. And there's good reason for that. They've done really nothing to lose it. I understand they've stumbled here and there, but everybody has stumbled here and there. Even Georgia stumbled. Yes, we're unblemished records, but everybody's had their struggles. I don't think there's any outright team that can say they've done no wrong all year. Alabama is notorious for just destroying everybody they play and being the number 1 seed with no questions asked. But, if Georgia is to stumble even in the in this last week's game or in the SEC championship game, people would put a question mark on them being the number 1 seed, especially if, whoever wins, the Ohio State Michigan game. And then if we go on and destroy Iowa, like we know we will, do we get arguments for the number 1 seed? I think so. I honestly do. So it is going to be chaos. Chaos is the only word for it. It's going to be insane at the end of this, after the division champs game. It's going to be something else.
Yeah. And, and if Notre Dame even were, if they didn't lose to Marshall, they could have on their resume playing Ohio State close, beating the Pac-12 and the ACC champ. You'd almost have to put them into the college football playoff. With 3 losses. We know that is just not a possibility for them, but a great finish to the end of the season. So USC, regardless of this weekend out of conference game against Notre Dame, they will be there Oregon travels to Oregon State in a matchup that they have dominated. So if they win, they are in and it is done and dusted. No chance for Washington. Oregon going to win this one for you?
I think so. I think Oregon State's a good team, but Oregon is a much better team. And I think Oregon just gets it done. They deserve to be in the Pac-12 championship. They've played great football all year. They've had 2 bad weeks. I think they deserve to be in. And I think that they will believe they deserve to be in.
Yeah. I agree. That game against Washington was absolutely incredible. Great back and forth. And Oregon really kind of blew it there late, going for it on 4th down in their own territory, just kind of opened the door for Washington for no reason whatsoever.
Yeah, they pulled a Raiders move.
They literally did. That is the great. We need to change it. Raidering. They were raidering. It was terrible. They were in exile for that game. If they weren't so good in all the other games, they'd be in exile after that because it was absolutely the absolute dumbest decision I have seen this year in college football was how Oregon handled the whole last part of that game. It was terrible. I think that they're going to rectify that with a sound win over Oregon State, even if it is a rivalry week, which is sad because Washington State, always a great game. Washington has dominated that as well in late, but Washington State putting up 43 last year against Washington. Really might be able to make a game out of that and really make that interesting. If Oregon were to lose to Oregon State, that game would have severe importance. Washington has the head-to-head over Oregon. If they were to win, they would be getting in. But we have USC versus Oregon in the Pac-12 championship game to wrap up our Power 5 championship games, which are all going to be incredible next weekend. If it plays out like we think it will, USC, Oregon, all the college football playoff rides on to that, especially if USC can win against Notre Dame. Clemson, UNC, can Clemson keep their college football play hopes alive? LSU, can they book their ticket with a win over Georgia? If they do, what will that mean for the Georgia Bulldogs having 1 loss on the season and not being the SEC champion? And of course, the game this weekend. Go check out our preview on that one to see what we think of that one and who we think is going to win. And Iowa, who we have predicted to go out of the West there in the Big Ten. Going to be a great game in Indianapolis next week. And those are all our picks. Do your picks as well on ESPN.com for the final week of college football. All of those 16 games there. Or 10 games on there. Go get your picks in. And that will do it all for the regular season. Our first regular season coverage of college football, Doug, comes to an end this week. It has been a great ride. Great games this weekend, so enjoy them tomorrow. World Cup has been absolutely phenomenal and continues as well. Enjoy all of the sporting weekend, and we will see you on Tuesday for when we cover the NFL after a great NFL week. From all of us here, I'm Adam, and that is Doug.